day, old sport. My name is Great Gatsby, and I'm sorry we had to meet under these circumstances, but a series of unfortunate events have brought me to this ending. I'm afraid to explain it all, I'd have to start at the very beginning of my childhood. But don't worry, old sport, it won't take too long, for as you can see, my life had a surprisingly early ending. To start with, I was born into a mundane and unwealthy farmer's family in North Dakota under the name of James Gatz, though I never identified as him. Why? Because I identified with the American dream. So I eventually decided to drop out of college and to take fate into my own hands and follow my dream of a greater destiny. Eventually I ended up in Lake Superior, where I met Dan Cody, the best copper tycoon I'd ever seen. He became my mentor, and I joined him on his 10-year-long yacht trek, which showed me the rich way of living. And you see, old sport, that's when I decided at 17 to change my name to Great Gatsby. A man who was more than a farmer's son. A man who knew the true way of living. Great Gatsby was the man I was destined to be. However, when Cody died and I inherited $25,000, his scam of a mistress cheated me out of that money, and I was left with nearly nothing. And while James Gatz would have given up at that point and returned to North Dakota, Great Gatsby knew to keep going on to pursue his dream. And let me tell you something, old sport, it was worth it. For at 27, during my training for the World War, I met the most beautiful woman, Daisy Faye, and fell in love with her. But I knew I could never marry her. Not right then, and not like that. For she was everything I wasn't. She was from a wealthy high society family in Louisville. However, she promised to wait for me until I was who I wanted to be. Eventually, I left for the war and was promoted to major in the U.S. 16th Infantry Regiment. Meanwhile, Daisy got married to Tom Buchanan, a cheating bastard who inherited a lot of money from his parents and never worked a day in his life. I knew that if I had been rich, Daisy would have married me in his place. When I returned to the United States, I was determined to become a rich man for Daisy. I would prove her that I was the man she needed to be with. I moved to New York, where I made acquaintance with Mayor Wolfsheim and involved myself in some shady alcohol business, which I'm not proud of. But you see, old sport, most money's made through shady business, and it allowed me to make the fortune I needed to win over Daisy. After some time, I moved to a mansion in West Egg. Not by coincidence, but because I knew that Daisy, Tom, and their daughter lived close by. I hosted many open-door parties, but I couldn't enjoy them half as much as my guests did. You see, old sport, all the luxuries and parties I solely hosted because I was hoping that someday Daisy might show up. But she never did. I often spent my parties outside at the bay, where I could see a light burning over on Daisy's side, and I spent most evenings thinking of her and wishing that someday that light might be on my side of the bay. One day, Nick, her cousin, came along and moved in next door and became a good friend of mine. He was a good old sport, and through him, Daisy and I got a chance to reconnect. I was very nervous, though I had been preparing myself for this moment for years. Everything had to be perfect. We spent some time together, and I invited her over. I could finally prove her the respectable rich man I had become, and from then on, we spent nearly every day together. And we would have spent many more happy days if it wasn't for Tom Buchanan. Unfortunately, that cheating husband of hers showed up to one of my parties in New York and exposed me to Daisy. I knew she loved me more, but upon confrontation, the poor girl ended up completely confused and said she wanted to stay with Tom. Maybe it was denial, but I didn't have any of it. You see, old sport, I knew she loved me. I saw it in her melancholy eyes. Eventually, as it got late, Daisy drove the two of us out of New York back home in my Rolls Royce. She was so confused and distracted that she hit Mrs. Wilson and drove straight on. I made it clear to her that if anyone would come after her, I'd take the blame. Ensuring that Daisy was home safely, I went home and did some thinking. I was popular, I was rich, I was living in this huge mansion, business was doing well. I had everything a man could ever dream of, and yet I felt I had nothing. You see, old sport, in all my years I spoiled guests with my riches, but never enjoyed them myself. The parties, the luxury, it was all for Daisy. I had a huge pool and had never once set foot in it. The last thing I remember was lying on the water float in my pool, and then... So here we are. Quite a story, isn't it, old sport? The failed idea of an American dream. I suppose it's my own fault, but I only did what so many others has tried to do. I erased my failed past and built a successful new life. Maybe my mistake was just that. I tried to forget and run away of who I was, and my past somehow managed to catch up to me. Maybe one can't reinvent oneself completely and start over on a clean slate. Nobody knew who I really was. It was all speculation, rumors, and gossip. Not even I, Jay Gatsby myself, knew exactly who I was. Because I didn't just change my identity. I lost it. I hate to salute Tom in any way, but he always stayed true to his racist, wealthy social upbringing, and he ended up getting everything. Daisy, a family, money, and recognition. It's just a shame that he was born with everything thrown in his lap and I wasn't. Life's unfair, isn't it, old sport? I do wonder what would have become of me if I stayed in myself, what my life would have been like. Maybe if I hadn't been so presumptuous, it would have turned out all right in the end. I guess my wrongdoing was failing to recognize that I should have built on myself instead of changing and abandoning myself. So, if I may give you one piece of advice, old sport, stay true to yourself and who you are, for it's the best you can do. Sincerely, James Gatz.